And when we take a closer look at how we actually go from our fossil resource through to products, there's something really quite important you'll notice about how our industry functions. And that's that from this feedstock, the first thing we actually do for our chemical industry is rely very heavily on on large quantities, but only a small number of very simple molecules. They have some kind of functionality, so predominantly they're either aromatics or alkenes, with the exception of methanol. But these are the building blocks for the vast majority of our chemical industry, and we refer to these as our base chemicals. And then from these we then go on to make commodity chemicals, and then from these we'll go on to make an array of products. And this is really, obviously an overly simplified version, but hopefully what you can see is we go from just a few simple building blocks up to many, many products. And what we're having to do progressively as we go along here is really add functionality into the whole system. So we start with a little bit of functionality on some simple molecules, and as we progress across to our products, we're putting functionality in. And as I mentioned earlier, what's really key about these base chemicals to support our industry is that they're available on an enormous scale. So if you look in the data from 2010 for the production of these base chemicals, you can see that their quantity produced in that year is really quite astronomical, and especially so for ethene and for propene and for the aromatics like xylene. And if we look at the data for that year and see how much crude oil was extracted, so we've got around 360 million tons in total of these base chemicals produced, and in that same year we took about 3.6 billion tons of crude oil out of the ground. So roughly about 10% of that crude oil is going off to make chemicals. The rest is used for fuel, energy, and a little bit is used for things like asphalt and materials like that. Some of these base chemicals have already been looked at and are being produced from biomass as we speak. But if you look at the quantities, it's really only just like touching just the very edge of the quantities we need. So actually a lot of people get excited about Braskem and the quantities of bio-based ethene that they're producing in Brazil from sugarcane. But again, its quantity really is only tiny. Still, it does show that the technology is there. So what we're doing here is we're dropping in replacements. So we've got a chemical structure for these base chemicals, and what we're looking here is to make the exact same chemical structure but from biomass. But some of them will always pose major challenges. So benzene, toluene, and the xylenes actually look really quite challenging to generate from biomass. And when we take a closer look at pharmaceuticals later, we'll see actually there is a difficulty for us regarding aromatic compounds.